As of our taping on Thursday this week, that would be yesterday, of course, Governor Susana Martinez called a special legislative session in Santa Fe, but had not yet issued a proclamation for a session. Again, this is as of our taping right now. The governor is adding other issues to the list for lawmakers to address, such as reinstating the death penalty in some cases. Now, what do you think the lawmakers should be focusing on in this special session? What do you think would help get the state budget on track? Get in touch with us here at NewMexicoInFocus.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm joined this week by Daniel Foley, former House Minority Whip, Dee Dee Feldman, former state senator, Laura Sanchez-Rivey, she's an attorney with Cuddy and McCarthy LLP, and former state representative Janice Arnold-Jones. Now, Janice, a lot going on behind the scenes here. As I said, we really don't know as we're sitting here taping this. Of course, it's Friday night now airing, and this has started at noon earlier today. But as we sit here, let's get the general lay of the land here. We've got some stuff on the table, obviously, about, let's start with the death penalty, and the governor wanting to have the death penalty as part of this discussion. What's your thoughts on that?
I just cannot believe that you would throw that out there, although Dan Foley was right months ago. He said this is going to be on the table.
That's right.
But to look at a death penalty bill that is going to solve the problem, that is well worded, well crafted, is going to take some discussion. I want to know where the DAs are saying, please come do this. Where are they? Because if you, like the three strikes law, if it is poorly worded, may be useless.
Right.
And if you're going to do this, should be useful, should not be, with all due respect, a Lawyer Protection Act.
Sure.
Because that is what it had turned into. I know poor Laura.
Under criminal law, so.
But it's a very expensive proposition
That's
with
right.
very little payout.
I'm glad you got to that point. And Dee Dee, pick up on that if you would. There's been no discussion about costs.
Oh, yeah.
And all kinds of other things that associated with the death penalty besides the act itself. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a distraction, obviously, and we could talk about it for a long time when we really should be talking about the budget, I think. But, you know, the death penalty costs 4 times as much as an ordinary criminal case. We have more exonerees here in New Mexico than mostly every other state, mainly because of the Vagos gang, motorcycle gang back in the 1980s, if some of the viewers may remember that. You know, it's just such a red herring. We took 10 years. Basically, we took 10 years to discuss this important moral, religious, political, fiscal issues in the New Mexico legislature from 1999 until 2009, when it was passed.
To repeal the death penalty.
Yeah.
That passed then.
Yeah, to repeal the death penalty. And to think we could deal with it in a couple of days is, you know, it's irresponsible. I mean, this session's going to cost $54,000 a day anyway. And to think that the governor is throwing this in to the mix, it's clearly political. And it's been defeated, I think, 4 or 5 times already in the recent years. So the outcome probably won't be any different, but the difference is the governor has angled it so that those votes can be used on political pamphlets.
Literally the next day, probably, right? Just print them out and send them out. Laura, again, we don't know. It could have blown up between noon and 1 o'clock today as we sit here and tape this on Thursday, midday. But the idea that where can Democrats go with this? If they want to get to the money issues involved here, how do you get around a death penalty call, so to speak? It's the call that's not a call. Do you know what I mean? How do you get around that? Do you have the numbers? Do you have the PR? How do you maneuver around this?
I think it's both. I mean, I think this is, I agree, it's a political issue. It's a wedge issue that's been thrown into this at the last minute to try to get people on record about what their votes are. But I think what's important to remember is it cuts both ways.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's, you know, this is an issue that was studied, dealt with the legislature for 10 years. It's something that I think a lot of people, you know, and I was actually particularly struck by Dennis Kintai's comments about how it's a moral issue. It's something that people, you know, should decide for themselves. And he was actually calling for a constitutional amendment, which is, you know, another option that they could take. But it's really something that has been discussed, given that it was discussed for 10 years. I mean, it was a 60-day session is the right place for something like this, in front of multiple committees, with multiple constituencies attending.
Let alone the run-up to those committees, you know, all the discussions that went on.
And the drafting of language ahead of time. It's not the sort of thing you throw into a special session. So I think that is clearly a political stunt that could go wrong. I think as as far as the Democrats, they're going to hold steady, certainly the Senate Democrats, in terms of pushing back on that and really trying to focus on what the special session is about, which is this huge deficit that we have. And I think that it's unfortunate that there's this distraction of the death penalty and the 3 strikes law and all the criminal reform issues, as opposed to the focus of the budget, which is really what's important and what needs to, they should really take that seriously enough to sit there and figure out what the appropriate solution should be. And just for the record, I don't practice in criminal law. And I'm glad that I don't. I have a lot of respect for people who do, because I think it's tremendously difficult, but I don't. And so I don't take, I'm not offended by what you said. I understand the context.
There you go.
But yeah, I don't do that kind
Let's
of
give the man of the moment his moment. You called it, we've been getting notes here at the old New Mexico PBS. Dan Foley called it 4 weeks ago, special session in the death penalty. Why were you so sure back then? I mean, how did you know that this was going to be the card thrown on the table?
Well, I think there's multiple things. First of all, with the amount of crimes against children we've had, the heinous crimes we've had, with baby Brianna's mother getting out of jail, I just think there's been a huge public sentiment that this is a topic they're not happy with. They're not happy with the way things are going. And the masses usually don't respond in a thoughtful process, right? The masses usually want blood.
Right.
And so I think leading up to realizing that if we're going to have a special session, I think there's going to be enough of a push from, letters to the editor, people calling in, stuff like that, legislators hearing from constituents, the governor's office hearing from folks to say, we want this.
Is this a situation, though, Daniel, of the loudest voice winning? Because, yes, there are constituents that want to see action whenever there's an emotional moment. But there's a lot of other constituents out there that say, let's just stay steady here.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? How come those voices don't get beyond?
I think they
the
get
surface?
heard. I think that there's, to be quite honest with you, I don't think the death penalty, when it was repealed, and the attempts when I was in the legislature, I don't think it's as. I think there's more people that would want to see the death penalty reinstated in this state than there are that are opposed to it.
Do you?
Oh yeah, especially in New Mexico. We've been very judicious. We've had one person victim of the death penalty in
the appropriate
70
term is
years.
killed.
Killed. Well, and he
Killed.
asked.
He had one person killed.
Yeah, he
Not only
wanted
did he
to
ask,
be
he
dropped all
committed
of
he
his-
committed an unbelievable.
Yeah, but he dropped all his
heinous act.
appeals, is the
He committed
point.
an unbelievable heinous act against a young girl. See, at some point, this is the kind of conversation
But
that
let me ask you this. Governor Martinez, even when she was DA, she did not call for the death penalty, even when she was DA for her county.
Not even for baby Brianna.
Right, exactly. So something seems odd here when I hear the governor,
It's political stuff.
So, no, there's a political stunt in Santa Fe. We're all shocked about that.
Well, but the thing is, none of these, and I agree with Dan that the issues that have happened recently with children are heinous. They're terrible, and the killings of police officers that we've seen, like the one in Hatch, is really awful. And so obviously people are, I think that people in the governor's office, the governor, are using that as a reason, as justification for pushing this forward. But at the same time, the death penalty is not going to apply to any of those particular people.
Right.
Even if it does get reinstated, it's not going to apply to them. And the other thing is that just as many people, I think, that are concerned, upset about I guess the death penalty, if there are people that do that, there's also people upset about why wasn't CYFD, following up on the Victoria Martins issue. You can go back to Omari Varela and reports to CYFD.
Sure.
There's people that are concerned about the administration, whether it's a lack of funding, a process issue, whatever it is, but something is happening where kids are falling through the cracks.
Am I going to get any time on this, Gene, or do I just get the 3 seconds and we go back around the table? I'm
Go
just
ahead.
asking.
Yeah, I got you.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
I get 2 sentences out and then we stop. So I think that there's
Don't stop.
there's some. I was being gracious. At the end of the day, Gene, it is a political issue.
Right.
We're sitting here listening to folks at this table and across the state trying to blame the governor for the fiscal issues that we're in, and the Republicans who have been in charge of the House for 2 years. The Democrats have been in charge of the legislature for time immemorial. The budget starts and finishes in the legislature. The governor gets the budget. So we can't talk politics on one side and say, oh, the evil governor is running politics with the death penalty. Oh, and by the way, it's all her fault for the budget where it is. I think that that when we do meet for these sessions, there is an opportunity to take care of some things that need to be taken care of. And I think, as someone who was against doing away with the death penalty, with what we're seeing happen in the state, I think there's a list of people that we should be adding to that list.
Let's talk about budgets and such. Again, we're a bit of a loss here since the session started before we had a chance to react to it. We'll follow up next week with a lot of reaction to what's happening. But we've got some money issues here. Have you heard a plan from anyone?
You know,
on how to
it's very
do this?
distressing because
Yeah.
the budget issues, circling back to the death penalty,
Yeah.
what has happened to our courts, to the public defenders, DAs, corrections?
That's right.
You know,
Underfunded, right.
And
As
you
well
know,
as the judiciary.
and the judiciary. And so making across-the-board cuts is very easy. And I appreciate that the governor stepped up and said to the agencies that she controlled, you will cut 5% and you will do it right now. And she made a call that all other elected agencies do the same.
Right.
She didn't have any control over those. But to make cuts across the board may actually not help us, and we may need to actually set some priorities, and that also means the things that you love will not be funded. That's how difficult this session is. And Dan was there when, under Richardson, we were $1 billion down, and we had to cut, and it was painful, but we've never recovered from that.
But-
so now what?
Right.
But you know, in 2009, which was the big year that we had to make up that deficit, we had the cavalry coming in from Washington with the TARP funds, the ARA funds. There is nothing like that here.
That's right.
And so the cuts are going to be deep. I've heard a number of different proposals, although this session is unlike others because their talks have broken down. There is no plan. There was no plan put forward by the governor for this, and the legislature is in a responsive mode. But I have heard about some things that are being talked about, and one is seizing some funds that school districts are in control of right now. $125 million, and putting that into the reserves. We've already rated the reserves, by the way. It's a given that we're going to be doing away with the tobacco fund. And I've heard also about a further 7% cut to higher ed,
Right.
and a further 5% cut to the courts. So I think those things are going to be talked to. I would look for, and the governor, of course, is blaming the Democrats in the Senate for holding these things up. This is another part of this political dance. But I would look to the Senate, and I'm prejudiced for the Senate, to come up with a bipartisan solution to this that might involve closing some tax loopholes as well as some cuts.
Laura, let me put it this way. Can raising taxes have any prayer just as a talking point during the special? Or if not, does it set up something for the regular session coming up? Is that a possibility this lap?
I certainly think it'll be a point of discussion. Whether it actually has any legs, I think, is a whole other question. It's a political year, and I think that's the reality. Everybody's up for re-election, and nobody wants to be the one that raised taxes going into a re-election, especially if they have a tough re-election.
That's right.
So I think that's going to be, certainly a factor for them. In all reality, they're going to have to consider whether that's something they want to, go into the re-election with. But something is going to have to give. I mean, we
Right.
have some very serious problems. That I'm not, rating every single fund that's out there, short of the permanent fund, is not, it's not going to be enough. So they're going to have to figure out how to make this work. And we're not just talking about this current fiscal year, but the previous fiscal year.
That's right.
So it's I think there's some very serious consequences. They're going to
That's
have
right.
to be realistic.
Dan, we got some further news on something you've been talking about here at this table for quite a long time. Oil and gas prices are poised to have another hit here soon. We have another dip, we have more problems, so I ask under the same idea, cannot the idea of revenue enhancement get on the table at some point when you've got all this
They can.
against...
They can. I mean, I think that even the Republicans in the legislature have said, look, even the chairman of House Ways and Means said, look, I'm not opposed to looking at tax increases in the right places
Right.
if we're going to, have an adequate tax cuts. We're going to look at actual spending cuts to go along with those.
Right.
I think that what's happening, though, and Senator Feldman points it out really well, is that the chickens are coming home to roost. For 100 years, we've been relying on Washington, D.C. to bail us out. We've been relying on the oil and gas industry to bail us out. We've asked, since I was in the legislature, one of the key components that could prevent this from happening is truth in forecasting. We don't have that in New Mexico. We set the price of oil and gas whatever we want it to be so that we can have a balanced budget, regardless of whether it's Democrats or Republicans in charge.
Absolutely.
They come up with a budget and say, here's what oil and gas will be, and away we go. And in the past, we've said TARP money, tobacco settlement money.
That's right.
Money from Senator Domenici and Senator Bigeman would come in the past. And that stuff, those days are gone. It's not happening anymore. And I think that, at the same time, one of the things that I think that the governor has to step up and I think take ownership of is the growth in Medicaid. When she expanded the Medicaid and those dollars keep getting cut that are coming from the feds, that's a bigger burden. And we've learned through the Johnson administration that once you pass an entitlement program, you can't cut it. And so you're in trouble.
There you go. When we come back to the line, we'll look at the announcement this week that UNM President Bob Frank will not seek another term. Sorry about that.